Welcome to my channel where we discuss various topics related to Quebec and Canadian real estate. As always, my name is Joseph Nour. I'm a local real estate broker here in the city of Laval. And in today's episode, we are continuing our video series about selling your property. This is step number 2 in our 5-step process to sell your property. In the previous episode, I talked about step number 1, which was all about the planning phase. In today's episode, step 2, we're going to be talking about what I refer to as the go-to-market readiness. Basically, all the tasks that we're going to talk about in today's episode are geared toward preparing your house to be on the market and eventually be able to receive potential buyers. Okay? So there are 6 things that I want to touch on in this episode. So let's get right into it. So I'm going to assume that you're going to be working with a broker. Although if you are looking to sell your property on your own, if you feel that you have what it takes to be able and the knowledge and all that, all the time you need to be able to sell your own property, there are going to be some steps that are, or some elements I'm going to touch on that are common, whether you're selling on your own or via a broker. So let's get right into it. So step number 1, or I should say the first task, is to basically sign a brokerage contract with the real estate broker that you decide to go with. Now the brokerage contract. So here so I work in Laval, but in all of our province in Quebec, basically we use the same brokerage contract that is designed by the government here. And so in that brokerage contract, so obviously the broker is going to explain to you A to Z. So I'm not going to go through all the clause and everything that's in the contract. I'm just going to highlight some of the important element that you need to know. So the first one is obviously the sales price. So you and your broker are going to agree on the price that your property is going to be put on the market. And basically, in order to get there, your broker would have done what we refer to as a CMA, so competitive market analysis. So when you were meeting with your broker, if you met with regardless if you met with one or multiple broker, usually they should have done a competitive market analysis where they show you comp sold and the pricing strategy. So on the brokerage contract, there is going to be a section where you guys agree on the sale price or the listing price, I should agree. So that's not necessarily the price you're going to sell it at, but that's the price that you're going to list it at. So that's going to be the first element that's going to be important on that brokerage contract. Also, we typically do a identity validation, and basically we just want to make sure that all the right individuals that are on the deed are part of that brokerage contract, because it might get into some issue down the line. So example, if there's 2 individuals on the deed, basically these 2 individuals will have to sign the brokerage contract and agree to the sale. So that's part of the identity validation. We just want to make sure that the right buyers are part of the transaction. Next is the inclusion and the exclusion. So your broker is going to go through what exactly do you want to keep in the property, meaning being part of the sale, and what is excluded from the sale. So it really needs to be clearly articulated in the brokerage contract. Eventually, that information is also going to be entered in the listing that's going to be shown on the MLS. The possession date and the signature of the deed of sale. Usually what we will put is 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days after the acceptance of a purchase offer. But those are all things that you will discuss with your broker based on your need, your strategy. Are you buying another property? There's a lot of factor to consider there. I'm not going to get into that in today's episode. And the other part that is important is the contract length. So your all brokerage contract usually have a length of time. Typically, and the time is negotiated between you and your broker. So it could be, as short as a week to 30 days, 60 days, 6 months, a year. It depends on the situation, depends on the property. And know that although there's a brokerage contract, here in my province in Quebec, there is rule where you can break that contract within a few days of the signature if you're not satisfied. But typically, like example, when I'm working with buyers, I let them cancel at any time if they feel that I'm not the right person to sell their property, or they're not comfortable working with me. I usually just, I let them know they can cancel anytime. It rarely happens. But know that there's a brokerage contract end date in there. So this is just a summary, but basically the first thing here is obviously you need to sign a brokerage contract with your real estate broker. The second thing, very important, is the seller declaration. And I've mentioned this document in previous episodes. So if you're like a buyer and you're looking at a property, seller declaration is one of the important documents to consult. So any seller has to fill, if you're working with a broker, you have to fill the seller declaration. So it's a very lengthy document that asks you a bunch of questions about the property. When did you purchase the property? Has it ever been rented? What year is the roof? Has there any been water damage? Has there any been like mice or any other kind of animal that's infiltrated in the property? So there's a bunch of questions, and it basically gives, if you want, a state of the property. And that document is going to be made available to any other broker that will be working with buyers. And so they're going to be showing it to their buyer. And typically the buyer we usually recommend the buyers to go through that seller declaration before they come visit the property. So if there's any issue that we don't bring in people at your property for no reason, right? So it's important that on that seller declaration, if there has been any renovation in the property, all of that stuff is going to be mentioned in there. So usually it takes, anywhere between an hour to 2 to 3 hours to fill that up, and your broker is going to walk you through it from A to Z. But that is a critical document that we're going to usually have the client complete it right after signing the brokerage contract. So that was number 2. Number 3 is we're going to be collecting a bunch of documents. So certificate of certificat de localisation, as we mentioned in French. The deed of sale. We're gonna pull up all your city taxes, your school taxes, any bill or invoices if you've done some renovation, if it's a condo, declaration of co-ownership, financial statement, a bunch of other document based on the property. If there's, if it's a plex and there's rental income, copies of the leases and all that good stuff. So here at that stage, we're just collecting all the document, and we want to, basically the idea is we want to validate, as brokers, we need to validate the information that the seller is providing us, right? So that when we advertise the property, we've made our due diligence, and we've validated all the proper information. So that was number 3, which collecting all the proper document. Number 4 is basically analyzing all these documents to make sure that what we're eventually going to be advertising to potential buyer are all correct, right? So this is an important step. It's something usually that the notary will look at when you go to sign the deed of sale. But if you've gone through the process, that the notary is usually at the final step. So you've already agreed on the purchase price and a bunch of stuff, and then you go sign the deed of sale at the end. So typically it's a bit late to identify any potential issue. So as brokers, we do our verification and validation at the early stage to make sure that there's no hiccup, right? So that's the idea here. So that's step number 4, where we analyze all the documents just to make sure everything is in order. And if there's any red flag, we'll typically discuss it with the owners and prepare a game plan to address it. Number 5 is we will bring up some recommendation regarding making changes to the property. So if we need to declutter the property, if it need, for example, a fresh coat of paint, or there's some minor reno that we think is a good thing to do, or do some landscaping to give it a bit of more of a curb appeal. So usually we'll provide some recommendation to the seller to ensure that once it's on the market, it's looking great, and we go to try to get the maximum price for it. Number 6, which is the last thing in step number 2, is preparing the MLS listing. So very important. So there's a bunch of things we do in order to prepare the MLS listing. So if the property needs cleanup or whatnot, that's when we're going to mention it before we bring in somebody to take the pictures. If the property needs to be staged, if it's an empty property. Pictures, very important. I'll typically bring in a professional photographer to take a picture of the property. We also do, it depends on the broker you work with, I like to do floor plans, whether it's a house or a condo. I think it's very useful when people are looking on the MLS listing and you see some floor plan. It kind of helps filter people that typically will come visit your property and they don't like the layout. So it really helps. We always get good feedback on it. We'll take measurements of all the rooms in the property and the home, so that obviously going to be listed on the MLS listing. We're also going to document the material. So what kind of flooring do you have? The type of roofs, types of cabinet, etc. All that stuff is going to be documented, and we're also going to be writing up a description of the property, which is going to be seen by any potential buyer. So all these activities, I'm kind of summarizing it here. There's a lot more work, but that gives you a summary of what to expect at step number 2 of our 5-step, which again, I refer to it as the go-to-market readiness. So everything we talked about today is really to ensure we prepare all the work that needs to be done so that we can eventually put your property on the market. So I hope this video was useful to you. I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, thank you very much for watching. Take care.